The main reason is because of the need. If I flew commercial, I'd have to stop 65% of what I'm doing.
For decades, Kenneth Copeland was one of the most recognizable faces on religious television, reaching millions with his sermons, teachings, and unmistakable presence. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, viewers began asking the same unsettling question: why was he no longer on the air? Rumors spread rapidly, speculation intensified, and countless theories emerged to explain his sudden disappearance from familiar screens. So, was he silenced, forced out, or was there another story unfolding behind the scenes? The real reason has sparked far more debate than many ever expected. From hit singer to televangelist, long before Kenneth Copeland became one of America's most recognizable televangelists, he was actually chasing a completely different dream. Believe it or not, his first taste of national fame didn't come from preaching behind a pulpit. It came from standing behind a microphone. Back in the 1950s, Copeland was building a career as a singer, and for a while, everything pointed toward a bright future in the music industry. His song, Pledge of Love, became a nationwide hit, climbing to number 17 on the Billboard Top 40 chart in 1957. The success opened major doors, even earning him an appearance on the hugely popular television show American Bandstand. At that point, few people would have guessed that the young musician entertaining audiences would one day become one of the most talked about religious leaders in America. But life had other plans. After serving in the military and experiencing a life-changing Christian conversion in the early 1960s, Copeland began turning away from the spotlight of entertainment and toward a calling he believed was far greater. That decision completely changed the direction of his life. In 1967, Copeland enrolled at Oral Roberts University, a move that proved to be one of the biggest turning points in his journey. While studying there, he became the personal pilot and chauffeur for the famous evangelist Oral Roberts. That role gave him a front-row seat to the inner workings of a rapidly growing ministry and allowed him to observe firsthand how large-scale Christian outreach was organized. Around the same time, Kenneth and his wife, Gloria, started attending the teaching seminars of Kenneth E. Hagin, a respected preacher whose messages about faith, healing, and God's blessings left a lasting impression on them. Those experiences inspired the couple to establish Kenneth Copeland Ministries in Fort Worth, Texas, determined to spread what would become widely known as the Word of Faith message. From those humble beginnings, the ministry steadily expanded through books, conferences, and television. In 1971, KCM introduced its first television program, The Word of Faith, followed by The Prayer Group the following year. By 1989, these broadcasts had evolved into the daily program Believer's Voice of Victory, reaching millions of viewers across the United States and around the world. As the ministry grew, so did Copeland's influence, with international offices opening across several continents. Yet his rising profile also brought growing criticism. His teachings on prosperity, together with the ministry's wealth, private jets, and luxurious lifestyle, have made him both highly influential and deeply controversial. Regardless of where people stand, few can deny that Kenneth Copeland has become one of the defining figures of the modern charismatic and Word of Faith movements. So, what makes Kenneth Copeland's ministry stand out? What special thing does he do differently? Let's find out. Inside Kenneth Copeland's global ministry. So, before we talk about the headlines, the criticism, or the controversies, it's important to understand how Kenneth Copeland built one of the most recognized ministries in modern Christianity. Whether people admire him or strongly disagree with him, there's no denying that his influence has stretched across the globe for decades. What began as a simple step of faith eventually grew into an international ministry that has reached millions through television, books, conferences, and online platforms. Kenneth Copeland founded Kenneth Copeland Ministries in 1967 after leaving behind a career in music to devote himself completely to preaching the gospel. From its headquarters in Tarrant County, Texas, the ministry steadily expanded far beyond the walls of a local church. Through radio broadcasts, television programs, magazines, books, podcasts, and social media, Copeland's message found its way into homes across the United States and around the world. Today, the ministry continues to connect with people from many different countries, making it one of the best-known names in charismatic Christianity. At the center of Copeland's teaching is a simple but powerful belief that God wants His people to live lives marked by faith, hope, healing, and victory. He has consistently taught that Christians should stand firmly on God's promises, speak His word with confidence, and trust that God can provide for every area of life. His sermons often focus on salvation, physical healing, financial provision, peace, and overcoming life's challenges through unwavering faith. These teachings closely reflect the principles of the Word of Faith movement, a message that was heavily influenced by renowned preacher Kenneth Hagin, whose ministry helped shape Copeland's own approach to preaching. But Kenneth Copeland Ministries has never been limited to sermons alone. Over the years, it has built an enormous media and teaching network designed to help believers grow spiritually. Its long-running television program, Believer's Voice of Victory, has aired in numerous countries for decades, while annual conventions and leadership conferences continue to attract thousands of attendees. The ministry also produces a wide range of Bible study guides, daily devotionals, children's resources, and Christian books aimed at strengthening faith across every generation. Beyond teaching, the ministry says it has invested heavily in humanitarian work around the world. Through disaster relief efforts, prison outreach, missionary support, and international evangelism, it reports providing practical assistance to churches and communities facing hardship while helping missionaries spread the gospel in many nations. Of course, Kenneth Copeland's ministry has also faced years of intense public scrutiny. Critics have questioned its prosperity teachings, fundraising methods, financial practices, and ownership of luxury assets, including private jets. Copeland has repeatedly defended those decisions, arguing that such resources allow him to travel safely and efficiently while reaching more people with the gospel. Even after decades of debate, Kenneth Copeland Ministries remains one of the world's largest charismatic organizations, supported by millions who believe its teachings have transformed their faith and strengthened their walk with God. So, what personal struggles helped Copeland keep his ministry soaring high? How was he able to make the best of the challenges without being defined by them? Kenneth Copeland's hidden battle revealed. For decades, Kenneth Copeland has stood before millions of viewers as a confident preacher known for speaking boldly about faith, healing, and victory. Because of that public image, many people assume he has always lived above life's emotional struggles. But during a special broadcast titled "God's Love Stops Depression and Grief," Copeland shared a much more personal side of his story. He openly admitted that there was a time when he wrestled with deep discouragement and depression, something he described as one of the hardest emotional battles he had ever faced. Instead of pretending he had always been strong, he acknowledged that there was a season when the weight of despair felt overwhelming. For many viewers, this honest confession offered a rare glimpse behind the public image, revealing a man who believed he had experienced the same kind of emotional pain that countless others quietly endure. According to Copeland, the turning point in that difficult season came through the unwavering support of his wife, Gloria Copeland. Rather than criticizing him or questioning his faith, she reportedly responded with compassion, encouragement, and constant prayer. He recalled her reminding him that Jesus did not see him as a failure or someone beyond hope. Those simple but reassuring words, he said, became a source of strength when he needed it most. Copeland believes her prayers, together with his own reliance on Scripture, helped him overcome what he described as a spiritual attack of depression. He has since shared that experience publicly, presenting it as a testimony meant to encourage others who may be facing similar emotional struggles. The broadcast also expanded the discussion beyond his own story, as Copeland and Professor Greg Stevens spoke about grief and emotional pain, teaching that believers should look to God's love, prayer, and biblical promises for comfort and hope. These teachings reflect the ministry's theological beliefs and should be understood as matters of faith rather than established medical guidance. Importantly, nothing in the broadcast suggests that Copeland's personal struggle caused his television ministry to fail, lose viewers, or be taken off the air. Instead, the ministry presents this chapter of his life as one that deepened his compassion and strengthened his message. Rather than viewing it as a period of decline, Copeland describes it as an experience that allowed him to better understand the hidden battles many people face. In his view, overcoming that difficult season gave him greater confidence to speak about hope, perseverance, and what he believes is God's power to bring healing, comfort, and renewed strength to those walking through their own seasons of grief and discouragement. Now, what was the real reason why Kenneth Copeland was taken off air, and what are the chances that he might make it back on air soon? Stay with us. Why TBN dropped Kenneth Copeland? All right, so here's what happened. After spending almost 4 decades as one of the most recognizable faces on Trinity Broadcasting Network, Kenneth Copeland's long-running television program, Believer's Voice of Victory, suddenly disappeared from TBN's lineup on October 2, 2020. For many loyal viewers, it came as a genuine surprise. After all, Copeland had become one of the network's most familiar voices, with millions of people watching his teachings year after year. Naturally, the unexpected departure sparked countless questions. Was there a disagreement behind the scenes? Had something gone wrong? Or was there another reason entirely? So when people finally began asking why Kenneth Copeland's long-running program had disappeared from TBN, many expected a shocking revelation. But according to both TBN and Kenneth Copeland Ministries, the explanation was far less dramatic. The network firmly stated that the decision had nothing to do with scandal, personal disagreements, or disciplinary action. Instead, TBN said it was simply moving in a new direction. The goal was to refresh its lineup with a broader blend of inspiring sermons, practical Bible teaching, Christian news, and faith-based programs that would better connect with today's viewers. As part of that larger programming shift, TBN announced that Pastor Stephen Furtick of Elevation Church would step into the daily broadcast slot Kenneth Copeland had occupied for many years, marking the end of a remarkable era on the network. What surprised many people even more was Kenneth Copeland's response. Rather than expressing disappointment or criticizing the network, he chose a gracious and optimistic tone. Speaking directly to his supporters, Copeland thanked TBN for nearly 40 years of partnership and expressed appreciation to both the network's founders, Paul and Jan Crouch, as well as its current leaders, Matt and Lori Crouch. He shared that Matt Crouch had personally explained the decision, saying the network believed God was leading TBN in a different direction and that Believer's Voice of Victory no longer matched its future plans. Instead of dwelling on the loss, Copeland encouraged his audience to see change as a doorway to new opportunities and to look ahead with faith. Even so, the announcement quickly fueled speculation across Christian media and online discussions. Because Copeland had long been one of the most prominent and sometimes controversial televangelists in America, many wondered whether criticism surrounding his prosperity teachings or his ministry's finances had influenced the decision. However, TBN consistently rejected those suggestions, maintaining that the move was simply part of a larger programming strategy rather than a response to controversy. At the same time, Copeland reassured viewers that Believer's Voice of Victory was far from ending. The program would continue through the Victory Channel, satellite television, streaming platforms, and other media outlets, allowing supporters around the world to keep watching despite its departure from TBN. But could other factors be preventing Copeland from coming back on air? What exactly could he be going through? Keep watching. Kenneth Copeland's shocking health crisis. So over the past few years, one question has kept coming up among Kenneth Copeland's followers. How is his health really holding up? As the veteran televangelist has appeared less often in public, many supporters have become increasingly concerned, wondering whether age and health challenges are finally beginning to slow down the man who spent decades traveling the world and preaching with remarkable energy. Those concerns grew even stronger in May 2024, when Copeland faced what would become the most serious health scare publicly reported in recent years. According to updates shared by his ministry, he was rushed to the hospital after experiencing intense abdominal pain. Doctors quickly discovered the cause: a ruptured appendix. The condition required emergency surgery, leaving little time for delay. For someone in his late 80s, the situation was particularly alarming, since a ruptured appendix can quickly become life-threatening if it is not treated immediately. News of his hospitalization prompted an outpouring of prayers and well-wishes from supporters across the globe, many of whom feared the worst as they waited for updates. Thankfully, the story took a much brighter turn. Copeland successfully underwent surgery and spent an extended period recovering before gradually returning to ministry activities. When he eventually addressed the incident, he expressed deep gratitude to everyone who had prayed for him. Rather than focusing on the frightening experience itself, he described his recovery as yet another example of God's faithfulness in his life. His message reassured many supporters who had been anxiously following every update and hoping to see him regain his strength. So here's what's interesting. Since that frightening medical emergency, there has been no publicly confirmed report of Kenneth Copeland experiencing another major health crisis. Even so, many of his longtime followers believe something has clearly changed. The fast-paced ministry that once kept him constantly traveling from one country to another for crusades, conferences, and large speaking events now looks much quieter. These days, his schedule appears far more carefully planned. He travels much less than he used to, makes fewer live appearances, and seems to be much more selective about the invitations he accepts. While no official statement has linked these changes to his health, many supporters have noticed the difference and continued to wonder what may have prompted this new, slower pace. For many observers, these changes are hardly surprising. After all, Copeland has spent nearly 6 decades in active ministry, maintaining a demanding schedule that would challenge people much younger than he is. Today, rather than trying to keep the same exhausting pace, he appears to be focusing his energy on carefully selected television broadcasts, ministry conferences, and special events. While his public appearances may be fewer than they once were, his continued presence and determination to keep sharing his message have reassured many supporters that, despite the challenges that naturally come with age, he remains committed to the work he has dedicated his life to. Now, with everything he has been through, has Copeland stepped away totally? How has he been taking his ministry recently? Copeland's ministry enters new era. All right, so here's what makes Kenneth Copeland's story even more remarkable. Even after facing several health challenges that naturally come with advancing age, he has not stepped away from the ministry that has defined his life for decades. Instead of announcing retirement or disappearing from public view, Copeland has chosen a different path, one built on careful planning, shared leadership, and a pace that better matches this new chapter of his life. Rather than carrying every responsibility on his own shoulders, he has gradually entrusted more of the day-to-day work to people he knows and trusts, ensuring that the ministry continues to thrive without depending entirely on him. That transition has become increasingly visible in recent years. Kenneth Copeland Ministries continues to produce its long-running Believer's Voice of Victory television program, organize conferences, publish books, and create Bible teaching resources that reach audiences across the globe. The difference now is that more familiar voices are sharing the platform. His daughter, Kelly Copeland, his son, Courtney Copeland, and several respected ministers who have served alongside him for many years have taken on much greater teaching and leadership roles. Their growing involvement has allowed the ministry to maintain its worldwide outreach while easing the physical demands placed on Copeland himself. Now, this is where things become especially meaningful. At 89 years old, Kenneth Copeland is still very much connected to the work he started more than half a century ago. While he no longer appears as often as he once did during his busiest years, he continues to participate in selected television broadcasts, special ministry events, and other important initiatives whenever his schedule and health allow. His appearances may be less frequent, but they continue to reassure supporters that he remains actively engaged with the mission he has spent a lifetime building. For many of his followers, this isn't viewed as someone slowly fading into the background. Instead, they see it as the natural evolution of a veteran leader. Rather than standing at the center of every event, Copeland is increasingly serving as a mentor, offering wisdom, guidance, and encouragement, while allowing the next generation of leaders to carry the ministry forward. It reflects years of preparation, with a leadership team capable of continuing the work while remaining faithful to the vision he established. Perhaps that's the biggest lesson from this stage of his life. Recent updates don't paint the picture of a man defeated by illness or limited by age. Instead, they show an experienced minister learning to adapt with grace and wisdom. Supported by medical care, strengthened by his family, and surrounded by trusted ministry partners, Kenneth Copeland continues to inspire believers around the world. His pace may have changed, but his commitment to sharing his faith and encouraging others remains as steady as ever, proving that influence doesn't end with age. It simply finds new ways to make a lasting impact. So, what do you think about the reason Kenneth Copeland was taken off the air? Do you really think his exit was justified? We'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.